Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the next edition of Ami Sites. I'm Ami Kassar, your host, along with our co-host, Len Ozer, aka SBA Queen. Joining us today is Len Bruskiewitz, coming from the suburbs of Boston. Len is the owner of Greater Heights Coaching, where he helps small businesses, owners, entrepreneurs be more successful by coaching them to optimize their 4 key levers in their lives and companies. Len, thank you for joining us on the show. We're excited to have you, learn more about you and your background, and dig in. So, Len, thanks for being here.
Great. Thank you for having me. I really appreciate you guys inviting me along.
It's so nice to meet you. And of course, the first thing I want to do is say, let's talk about the 4 most important things. But do you want to help tell everyone a little bit about how you got to this point? How did you start out? You didn't come out of college being a coach.
I did not. You're right. Like many, I graduated from college with a degree in finance and economics, and joined a technology company. So I worked in mainframe computers in a financial development program, and spent about the first 10 years of my career in financial planning and analysis. So you might guess that I've got kind of an analytical bend to me. I worked for a number of companies, including Intuit, where I ran all of financial planning and analysis. And about 10 years in, I said, I was just a numbers guy. And I said, I want to do more than just spout out a number and then sit down. So I talked to my mentor and got into business development. I did that in Europe. I actually, my wife and I got married and moved to Munich, Germany, where I was doing business development, new countries and new products for Intuit, which was super exciting. And then after about a year of that, I became the country manager for Intuit in the UK, which was exciting as well, right? So now this finance guy has now got general management as well as business development under his belt, and I really enjoyed that. Moved back to Boston, where I've been ever since with Intuit, launched one of the first SaaS products as the general manager, and then moved into more partnerships. And my career really from then on was mostly involved in partnerships. That's where Ami and I met when I was at Constant Contact running partnerships. So all of my career from that time was always focused on companies that serve small businesses. So Constant Contact, Intuit, Grasshopper, the virtual phone service. I worked for a startup called Fisherman, and it just all along the way, the end customer was small businesses, which I just have a real passion for. And so, as much as I've been doing partnerships, the last 7 or 10 years, I really realized that I've been doing a lot of mentoring and coaching of younger people, trying to help them move up the ladder, whether they were inside the company or partners I was working with. And as I look back, I said, you know what? I really enjoyed that. That was really, I got a great sense of satisfaction out of it. And so it was a pretty natural progression for me to move into coaching full time.
Full time. So you started your own business.
Started my own business. I am part of a franchise called FocalPoint. So it's a group of about 250 coaches worldwide. So we're able to leverage content and each other. But we do run our own businesses. So I go out and find clients and serve my own clients as a business owner.
Len, what type of business is that? Small business means, I know it says you help small businesses. Small business means a lot of different things to different people. Can you share with me, for us, what you mean by a small business?
Sure. So the classic definition, in my opinion, is 0 to 100 employees. I know IBM thinks
that's a big range.
Yeah, IBM would say 500 is still a small business, but really, to me, the classic is 0 to 50, right? Is what I would consider. The companies I serve are typically, I think of it more in revenue, normally a million to maybe 10 million in revenue. So probably not the single dog walker business, but a little more established than that, in that million plus range of revenue.
And how does your methodology or what you do, and we can talk about it, compare to, say, very popular, at least in some of the circles I hang out in, EOS, Entrepreneurial Operating System, or Scaling Up?
Sure. They're all variations of pretty much the same model. I went through and read the book about EOS and saw lots of things that I recognized from the principles that we follow. Right. So it's there are some things in there that are a little bit different, but for the most part, the model is the same, which is you're going in, you're setting goals, you're talking about how you're going to get to those goals, you review, you course correct, and you have accountability. So those are some of the core pinnings of all of the kind of management models that I'm familiar with, including EOS and what we teach to our clients as well.
So let's talk about those four pillars and see if that rings a bell with everybody that's using EOS or another system to run their business.
Sure. The four that we talk about are time, team, money, and strategy, right? So pretty much everything in your business comes down to one of those four factors. Um, a lot of clients are struggling with one or more of those, right? I don't have enough time. I'm missing my kids' soccer games. Or, I'd love to invest more in the business, but it's not as profitable as I'd like, or it's not growing as fast as I'd like. And then sometimes when it is growing, you bring on a team and they're not always communicating so well with each other. So that's an area that can cause issues. And then the final one's really the strategy. Where are we going? And this is an area that I've really have started to focus on is what am I going to do when I no longer want to be in this business? So transition, exit, succession planning, call it what you will. That's an area that I find very interesting just because of some of the numbers that are out there. 33 million small businesses. I'm sure you're all familiar with that number. 51% of them are owned by people 55 and over, which equates to 16, 17 million small businesses owned by people that are 55 and up. And I'm guessing that those folks, a lot of them don't want to be doing this, what they're doing in 20 years from now. So it's really thinking about how you move on to that next state phase of their lives.
And that's very interesting to us. And we can probably just say, oh, we totally agree, because we call it the silver tsunami, where lots of businesses are changing hands. And what we do in our organization in helping people getting financing are people that are buying these businesses. And especially we focus on the ones that are probably the size that you work with. And the people that are either selling to their children or their employees, they're not huge companies where, they just know exactly how it's going to transition and so forth. It takes a lot of planning from my perspective. So where do you jump into the process, or have you been with these business owners all along?
There are multiple points. One of the things I talk about is timing and planning is one of the key pieces to a successful transition plan. And I think one of the biggest things that small business owners don't realize is that you can't wake up one day and decide to sell your business the next. The guidance that I talk to is at least 2 to 3 years. And really, when it comes down to if you want to increase the valuation of your company, you need to be thinking about it even before that. So,
Oh, absolutely.
one of those key pieces is you've got to think about this before you do it. It's not something that you can just kind of snap your fingers and have it have a saleable business.
Right. And how did COVID push the timeline?
I think it certainly made it more difficult to have those face-to-face meetings that I think are pretty important when you're buying and selling businesses. There's a trust factor that comes into play. I think buyers sometimes want to see the facilities, want to see the offices, and that was made much more difficult by COVID. So I think everything got elongated. The processes took longer to build up that trust, and it was clearly an unusual period of time. I worked for a company that benefited greatly from the pandemic because they were creating websites for restaurants, right? And those websites were online ordering enabled, which during the pandemic, if you couldn't support online ordering, you were out of business, right? So it was a boon to that business, but think of all the ones that were the opposite. And so I think what that caused was the valuations of businesses who were trying to be bought and sold were all out of whack because you didn't
Yeah.
know what normal was anymore.
They were disrupted. I'm not 100% sure we know what normal is now, or if it's a new normal. Ami always describes it as the COVID dominoes and the way they're falling, and how businesses don't always know where they're landing. And so many of them were disrupted, and a lot of them had to actually change their business model, not just because they were not there, but the way that they serve their clients changed totally, not just how they were in the office. How did it affect your business?
So I was for a good part of the pandemic, I was still employed in corporate roles.
Oh, okay.
So it was, I felt it at that startup that really had a bit of a roller coaster, right? Had a great run because uh, restaurants needed online ordering and they needed a website to support that. But I've continued to feel the effects. I think where I'm seeing it now in my business is um, business owners trying to figure out what normal is and having that impact the value of their company, because you look back 2 years and it was a very 2-3 years, it was a very different place. So acquirers are always looking for historical information to guide the future, and it's hard to say whether 2 or 3 years ago was any indication of what the future will be like. Some did great, some not so
Right.
great. So that's how it's affected. I think it continues to play, and I'm sure you see that in your business as you're trying to look at funding options for people and looking at their historical financials.
Absolutely. But I would think that it would be, in a way, really good for your business, because they definitely could use more guidance than maybe if it had just been a straight line. Now they have the volatility, and I think that buyers, or prudent buyers, are looking to see how the business was affected by COVID.
Len, are
Right,
there
and
some favorite, or do you have some favorite coaching stories where you felt you've had the most impact that you could share?
sure. I think my favorite one is around a business owner who had started a business with her husband over 50 years ago, a retail business, successful. Her husband unfortunately passed away about 18 months ago, and she was left with the business, um, facing some competition from some really entrenched competitors, and has had a family member in the business as well as some longtime employees, but really didn't know what to do next. Really unclear as to what the path forward was. And so helping her get clarity around what she wanted to do, and she ultimately decided a succession plan to pass along to a family member was the way that she wanted to do it. I've heard it on podcasts of yours before. She's now able to sleep at night because that big decision is off her, is off her chest. Now there's still a lot of things left to do, but it's really helping business owners get to that point where they they know what their options are for the most part, and that's a big part of coaching. I'm seldom telling people what to do. I'm more often asking questions, and they know the answers. It's just helping them compartmentalize and get to what they feel comfortable with. So that's a favorite story of mine because it is such an established business that thrown into some turmoil, and now kind of has clarity of how to move forward, and a great story, right? The business will stay in the family.
That is a good story.
Are most of your clients local, or do you coach anywhere in the country or the world?
Doesn't matter, anywhere in the world. Most of it happens via Zoom, so geography is really less important. The only issue is I don't I only speak English, so unless I want to use Google Translate all the time, I'm typically dealing with English speaking clients.
How about that?
And where do you tell me a little bit about how the coaching works? In other words, what do you, is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly? What is the rhythm and the cadence of your coaching?
It's clearly flexible based on what the client needs. Typically, it's weekly 1 hour sessions. So there's normally a module that we're going to cover. So the client will get that module in advance. They'll read through it. Sometimes they have some homework to do. And then that weekly session we'll typically start out with, let's talk about some wins that you had. Let's talk about some challenges. Is there anything that supersedes the lesson we were supposed to talk about? That always takes precedence, right? If there's some crushing need within the business, that's what we spend our time on. If not, then we go through the module, and our modules are organized around big concepts, right? So getting clarity in the business, making it more effective, talking about sales, talking about growth, talking about leadership. So the modules build up to that, but it's typically a weekly cadence for an hour session per week.
And is there any group coaching or with other companies doing focal or workshops that everyone does together, or community around focal, or is it mostly the one-on-one relationship with the coach?
All of the above. So group coaching works. Group coaching works better a lot of times for the kind of under $1 million businesses, right? Where maybe they can't afford one-on-one coaching, but can get the value of a group session, or maybe a mastermind kind of idea where a group gets together and bounces ideas off of each other. There are workshops as well. There's training. There are a number of different services, and it really boils down to what's the need of the client.
So you mentioned that you were a franchise. So when you started your business, and coaching is really personal, I think. What drew you to this franchise?
So it really boiled down to looking at the model and what it was based on, and how it was structured, which I was able to look at a few, and most of them from the outside look the same. Where it really boiled down to me was talking to other coaches. It was wildly compelling to talk to the FocalPoint coaches. They're an incredibly helpful group. As I said, they're about 250 coaches worldwide. And if I call someone and say, hey, or if I call to the group basically and say, has anybody dealt with, architect who who is dealing in municipal buildings, there will be somebody out there who has had a client who is an architect dealing with municipal. There's just such a broad base of experience within the group, and they're all incredibly helpful. There's like zero competition, because there are a lot of companies out there, right? 33 million small businesses. So that's what drew me ultimately, was having conversations with the existing coaches and just getting a really great feel for how committed they were to their clients, and how helpful they were to each other.
And Len, are the coaches purely US based or all around the world?
All around the world.
Interesting.
And do you ever get to that? Go ahead, sorry, Len.
How long has this franchise been in existence?
I want to say it's coming on 20 years. So a lot of the core teachings are based on the works of a guy named Brian Tracy. You ever heard of Brian Tracy? He wrote Eat That Frog and a couple other books. He's a very well-known business development sales kind of guru. And so a lot of the content that we teach too is based on his knowledge.
Interesting.
Len, what's your best advice to a business owner or entrepreneur that thinks they want coaching or they could benefit from coaching, but is not exactly sure where to go next or how to do it or how to pick the best coach for them, what's your best advice?
This business, like many others in professional services, is a know, like, and trust business, right? So as my client acquisition strategy is not to put Google ads out, right? Is not to buy Google ads because those people don't know me. Arguable whether they will like me, but it will take a long time to get to the trust phase. So what I would recommend is if you're a small business owner and think you may benefit from coaching, it's inevitable that somebody in your network is either a coach or knows someone who's a coach. And so that's what I would do if I was a small business, because I'm going to rely on the opinion of somebody I already know, like, and trust, and would appreciate their referral. So, I would say, as opposed to going out and Googling or something like that, I would work through your personal network, because it's inevitable that somebody is connected to a coach. And what I would say is, if you were to reach out to somebody like me, I would tell you that the way that would work is we would schedule a 5-minute to 10-minute phone call, and it would really be, tell me about your business, and what's the biggest challenge you're having. And if that made sense to continue on, we would schedule further. If it didn't, we just kind of part ways, right? So one of the things that's interesting about coaching is it is not sold. So I have no pitch. um, Business coaching is bought by the client. They realize they have a need, and business coaches can help them solve that need. And so it's not there is no, you better buy today kind of thing, because that's just not how coaching works.
Do you rely on your clients for word of mouth referrals, I guess, because you said, advertising doesn't work. So is that your biggest challenge, is keeping your pipeline filled as an entrepreneur?
Sure. So referrals are like gold, right? If somebody's already happy with what I'm doing for them, if they refer me to somebody they know, I'm
Yeah,
already 2/3 of the way there.
right.
The other way is kind of what I described for how to reach out to someone. So what I've done is, just reached out to all the people I know, people I've done business with in the past, and just have a conversation with them and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. Do you know anybody? Right? I don't expect, like when I reached out to Ami, I didn't expect him to become a client, right?
Right.
But it was like, hey, Ami, anybody you know, right? So
Right.
that's that
Right.
kind of network of people is clearly the how you start. And then once you have, and it's the numbers around 5, 6 clients, once you get to that point, then the flywheel of referrals starts to kick in.
Starts to come in. So at this point, that's not your biggest challenge then.
Still is. So I'm still relatively new to this, so it's still a point of building up. And what tends to happen, and nobody likes to talk about it, what tends to happen is when you're new, you tend to be a little overzealous, and you tend to maybe sign up some clients that are not a great fit for you. And so you do have a little bit of turnover typically early on, and then you start to learn who your ideal client is,
Right.
and then they stay with you, right? Because they're perfect for you, you're
Yeah.
perfect for them. So there's a little bit of that getting going where your first couple clients may not be ideal.
Len, tell us about how you prefer. You spent a lot of time in your career working with big companies, and now you're working with smaller, more entrepreneurial companies. How's it compare?
I get a much greater sense of satisfaction by working with small business owners themselves. Um, it's I think what's interesting about it is when for example, when you and I met, within the corporate structure, there tends to be a less of a gap in knowledge between on various subjects. Most people are, they're doing their research, and when they come together, they tend to have the same or similar levels of knowledge. So conversations can happen pretty quickly, and you can determine, is this a good fit or not? what I'm finding now is that, especially in this area of succession and transition and exit planning, the small businesses I'm talking to have absolutely no idea what they need to be doing, right? So there's a ton more education that has to happen. People don't know what they don't know. They're an architect, so they know how to design things. They've never thought about, gee, what are the tax implications if I sell my business upfront versus over time, right? So there are all these things that nobody ever teaches, right? And so I think I get a great sense of satisfaction out of that, but things just move a little bit slower because the level of education on the topics that we're discussing there's a big discrepancy between the parties. So Ami, would you agree with that? When you're doing partner stuff on the tech side, most people kind of know the basics of it.
It's vastly different. And the only other piece of unsolicited advice I might give to people when you're out there looking for a coach, start with the person, not the system. Right? People say, oh my God, I need an EOS coach, or I need this coach, or I need this coach. What you really need is the coach that you're really going to connect with and you feel can really help you flourish and grow and evolve and challenge you. And then the system will follow. That's my 2 cents.
I would agree with you. It really boils down. It's person to person. There's no entity in between. So it really is, and look, business owners are sharing some pretty in-depth stuff with me, right? They're talking about their business, their baby that they've spent 20, 30 years growing. And part of it is a difficult conversation because if a business owner has spent 30 years building their business up, they may think it's worth $10 million to them because of all the sweat and blood and blood, sweat, and tears they put into it. When in reality, and I'm sure you see this on your side of the business, the market says it's worth $1 million, right?
All the time.
Yeah. And so that's hard, right? And so one of the things I say is, okay, the market says it's worth $1 million now. Let's try and get it to 10 million, right? Let's work together to try and get it there. But that, you have to have trust, right? It's difficult to deliver that message if the person you're giving it to doesn't trust you. So I agree with you. It probably doesn't surprise you that I agree that it's really about the personal connection more than the system or the modules or whatever else that you actually talk about on a week-to-week basis.
Len, it's been phenomenally interesting. Thank you so much. If our listeners want to find you, where do they come?
Well, they can go to my website, which is lenbruskiewitz.focalpointcoaching.com.
How do you spell that, buddy? That's a little tricky.
That is LenBruskiewitz.
Excellent.
.focalpointcoaching.com.
Thank you so much. We appreciate you. God bless. And thank you for sharing your story with all of us.
Thanks so much. It was very interesting. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Take care.
Good luck to you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.